Hey everybody, another GMG review. Today we're looking at Warhammer Age of Sigmar Destruction Battletome, Sons of Behemat. Behemat? I feel like every time I say that, I want to sing it like it's a Basement Jaxx song. Sons of Behemat, man. Now these guys were sent along as a complimentary review copy by GW, and big thanks for that, and are the 3rd edition Age of Sigmar update for the Gigantes, the big old Mega Gargants that are kind of like the Imperial Knights in 40k terms to Age of Sigmar, and the release kind of mirrors that with a brand new kit, a brand new Mega Gargant style guy, and some streamlining of the core sort of like allegiance rules for the Giants. So you can still take them as allies, which is cool. I mean, as like a decision for like a model making company goes, you really do want to be able to use the big cool, you know, stompy robot equivalent, the big giant, in as many armies as possible, and making the mercenaries just fits. It fits their background, it fits their theme. You can kind of talk them into fighting for your army if you pay them well enough. And it lets everybody paint one of these big cool models. And I've been doing that quite a bit. I use my Gatecrusher Gargant all the time in my Ogre Kingdoms army. I use it with my Night Haunts quite a bit back in the beginning. And I managed to get my hands on the new guy right here, which is the Beast Smasher Gargant, which also makes King Brog, who is the special character Gargant, available as a War Master choice now to the army, and is a bit like the Preceptor Knight kit in 40k. It's just one kit that makes everything. So if you see the King Brog kit, it's all the Mega Gargants. It's everybody. So like it's just a new frame basically that makes the Beast Smasher, King Brog, who's back here with this cool hat, and then also makes all the previous giants as well, the War Stomper, the Kraken Eater, and the Gatecrusher, I think his name is, which are of course beautiful kits. The one kind of like fiddly complaint is they all have the same legs. It would have been cool if you're going to do a new frame to just be able to pose them slightly differently, because they're all doing this kind of knock knees, like pigeon-toed in stepping thing, and while they do shift at the shoulders quite a bit and the heads and the torsos, yeah, it would have been cool to just get like a new back leg, probably actually a new front leg. You could have had it like standing on something like a tactical rock, you know what I mean? Like everyone loves tactical rocks. So just something different, just to like make them have like a second pose. I think that would have gone a long way, because one set of legs meant that you could basically make like 2 different Kraken Eaters now, or 2 different Gatecrashers, you know what I mean? Give a Gatecrasher like a different head and keep his flail and stuff like that, but have him a different leg pose and he would look different. Like, I think that would have been really cool as far as upgrades go, and I think that's a valid, like, I'm gonna say criticism, but just like suggestion. I think if you'd done that little tiny tweak would have gotten a lot more mileage out of the other kits too, which would have been cool. Big color section for all these guys. There's the one I painted. I painted the Gatebreaker, not Crasher. Gatebreaker Mega Gargant. And now that I got King Brog, who I will most likely paint up as King Brog, I think I want to do a War Stomper. I think a War Stomper would be cool because I do have a Chaos army. I have Death, Destruction, Order, and I have literally an army for each of them. But I've proxied my Gatebreaker a couple times as a War Stomper, and I think it'd be cool to have one. It's only my Stormcast. They get dragons and stuff, so I don't feel bad. You know what I mean? Like, I don't feel like they need to have a giant mercenary, whereas the other armies, like my Ogres, love having a giant, huge miniature in it. So do my Slaves to Darkness. I think it's fun. So do my Night Haunts especially, who just get like a truck. So anyway, Ash, get past all this. There's the Venerable Gargant kit too, who's the old Warhammer giant. Still one of my favorite all-time GW fantasy kits. Let's have a look here. Yeah, some cool painting stuff as well, obviously using contrast and non-contrast techniques. I used contrast for my entire Gatebreaker Gargant, and it worked out great. The skin actually worked out quite nicely with the flesh tone. So here we go, army rules. What you've all been waiting for. Shut up, Ash, and tell us what's new. Well, let's get right to it. Like I said earlier, a streamlined set of allegiance battle traits, enhancements, and command traits, but also gives the new stuff like getting some cool monstrous rampages just for them, and also some new battalions and stuff as well to go with the fact that they're now updated for the new edition. So things that are pretty familiar, Mightier makes Rightier. Each Mega Gargant has a Mightier makes Rightier value. For contesting objectives, it counts as that many models. All the Man Crusher Gargants are counting as 10. And the Mightier makes Rightier can degrade as they get more injured. Lords and Masters, you must decide whether your Sons of Behemat army will be a Taker tribe, Breaker tribe, or Smasher tribe, or Stomper tribe. The type of armory dictates who your general is. So basically, now that they've added the Beast Smasher, they've added the Smasher tribe. So it's your general has to be either a Kraken Eater, a Gatebreaker, a Beast Smasher, or a War Stomper, and then that gives you other abilities once you're part of that tribe. All right, Wrath of Titans. So these are additional monster rampages that a friendly Margaret can make, which is cool because you're gonna have so many monsters in the army. Having extra monstrous rampages makes sense because the core book only has 3, right? Like you can Titanic Duel, you can Stomp, or you can what's the other one? You can Yell and Ball. You can yell at the unit to make them not be able to take an order. So these give you extra ones. Now you have 6. So if you have 6 monsters, you can still do 6 monster rampages. Beast Grapple, pick an enemy monster within 3 of this unit and roll a die on a 3+ until the end of the combat phase. The strike last applies to both that monster and the unit rampaging. So you make both of you strike last. So you need to do that during the right turn to make sure you get to pick before that monster gets to go, but you both, all of a sudden, you basically just like tackle them, right? And you both strike last all of a sudden. So kind of corner case, because depending on who's gonna be able to pick first, you have to count the order of what order things are gonna go in to know that you get to go. So you have to actually like count how many combats are happening to make sure that that's the right rampage to do, but it could be super useful. Earth-Shaking Roar, pick an enemy unit with a wound characteristic of 1 or 2 within 3 and roll 2d6. If the roll is higher than their bravery, then for each point which exceeds the bravery characteristic, a model in that unit flees. Now flees is the interesting thing, which means that no matter how many wounds they have, they die. That's very different from like the extreme halitosis rule, which is kind of similar that Big Drug 4 Kika has, which is still in here, which causes mortal wounds. This one's just, they run. So if it's a 5 wound Vanguard or something like that, and you manage to boxcar it, you could make a bunch of big, actually, sorry, you couldn't do it. It has to be wound characteristic 1 or 2. So that's a hyperbolic example, but even 2 wound like Stormcast and stuff like that, not Paladins, but like a tougher infantry unit, you can make guys flee, and if it's a 2 wound unit especially, it's especially vulnerable. So that's actually pretty good against Orcs. You wouldn't be able to do it against Ogres, but there's a few armies that lean hard into like 2 wound models. Actually be pretty good. The leadership's really high, but it'd be good against the Fire Slayers have a lot of 2 wound models. Anyway, you can make guys run away even with their full wounds, and it's not a mortal wound, so like shrugs and stuff aren't affected by it. And then the effects of this monster rampage are not considered to be a battle shock test. So if you're immune to battle shock, you're not immune to it, which is a nice little kicker as well. So again, not crazy good because it doesn't affect anything with more than 2 wounds, but still very nice because it's not a mortal wound thing, which means things that let you shrug mortal wounds don't work against it. Discussing Resilient, actually it's good against Nurgle. Although again, they have good leadership, so it's not super great. Colossal Slam. Pick one enemy monster that's not part of a unit consisting of 2 or more models, and that's within a ½ inch of this unit. Then roll a die. So like it won't work on other Gargant mobs. It won't work against like a Dragon unit in Stormcast. It won't work against... I'm trying to think of what other monster units there are. I guess you could take a unit of the... What's the big bone monster in the Khorne army, the Bloodbound army, anything like that. On a 3+, you can remove that monster from the battlefield and set it up again anywhere wholly on open ground within a ½ inch of this unit. So basically, you like power slam them. That monster suffers D3 mortal wounds. In addition, it's -1 to hit for attacks made by that unit carrying this monster rampage until the end of the full-on combat phase. So basically, you're -1 to hit, but that monster takes D3 mortal wounds and you can relocate it. But you kind of overextend yourself, so you're -1 to hit for attacks made by the unit carrying this monster rampage. That doesn't super matter for the Gatebreaker Gargant, because he has a bonkers new ability that isn't actually an attack. So you could Colossal Slam with him and then do a shocking number of mortal wounds on a 50-50 dice roll, but we'll get to that in a minute. So there you go. They're not great. All of them seem to kind of have a downside except for Earth-Shaking Roar, right? Like you also strike last for Beast Grapple, so you gotta be careful with it. And Colossal Slam making you -1 to hit is not the greatest thing. I'm sure I'm reading that right. In addition, strike -1 hit rolls from hit rolls for attacks made by the unit carrying this monster rampage. Yeah, so you're -1 hit as well. But the Earth-Shaking Roar against certain armies with like average to low leadership and 2-in models could be really good. Actually, it'd be amazing against Squig Hoppers. Squig Hoppers would just get... I almost wish Owen was still here so that I could play against the Squig Hoppers and just be like, I'm going to just shout you off the table with my Gargants. But only my Gargants could actually, not even the little giants. All right, your enhancements, command traits, big personalities, monsters who tough 40 wounds instead of 35. A Furious Temper, once per battle when the general's picked a fight, you can say they're overcome with rage. You go back to top bracket for your wounds. And then Rabble Rouser, add 1 to charge rolls for friendly Sons of Behemat units wholly within 18 of the general. So make them fast. Artifacts of Power, the first one kills me. Extra Callousy Feet. That's an Artifact of Power. So all models with Almighty Stomp can take this, which means Mega Gargants basically. The Bear Stomp has an attack of 3 instead of 2, and a rank characteristic of -3 instead of -2, and a damage of flat 3 instead of D3. That's pretty cool. Puts you up to 9 potential wounds out of the Stomp. The Glowy Shield of Protectiness. When this unit's targeted by an attack, the weapon used has a rend of -1, it's taken to 0, and then in addition, if an unmodified save roll for attack is a 6, the attacking unit suffers a mortal wound after all the attacks have been resolved. So you have a 6+ mortal wound shrug back. That's a very handy thing, because dying to lots of little stabs is a problem for Mega Gargants. Scavenger Wake, once per battle at the start of the combat phase, you can pick 1 enemy unit within 3 of the bear and roll a number of dice equal to the number of models in that unit to a maximum of 10, and then for every 4+, take a mortal wound. So basically, you just you're being followed around by all kinds of monsters, and once per battle, you just tell them to go fight the things you're fighting. And then Amberbone Totem, this is probably, the Glowy Shield of Protectiness and the Amberbone Totem are probably the 2 most useful. The bear can attempt to charge even if they ran in the same turn. So run charge, you'll see why. There's a pretty significant 2 to 3 inch reduction on movement on pretty much all the Gargants. So being able to run and charge with the Amberbone Totem could be super handy. Longshanks got slightly better though. All right, the tribal abilities. So for the Taker tribe, so you can see they shortened the universal ones because they've added the more for the tribes. So for the Taker tribe, get rid of them for the purposes of contesting objectives. Man Crusher Gargants count as 15 instead of 10. And in addition, add 5 to the Mightier Makes Rightier of your Kraken Eaters. I want that for my collection. You can use this command ability at the start of the combat phase. The command can only be issued by your general, and if the unit receiving it is Man Crusher Gargants, until the end of the phase, add 1 of the damage characteristic of units if they attack an Artifact of Power or if they're unique. So being unique counts as an Artifact of Power in that case, which I actually think is a good compromise for making that ability more useful. But you can basically up damage when you're fighting things that are slightly better. Taker Tribe command traits, very acquisitive. They like having stuff. If you give an Artifact of Power to this general, you can pick an additional Artifact of Power and give it to them as well. So you can have 2 and they have to be different. So you can take both the Amberbone Pendant and the Glowy Shield of Protectiness. I think that's going to be pretty popular because Brog's a War Master, which means you can still have a general on top of Brog. You can make him a Taker, and then you can have both the bounce back and the run and charge. And then extremely intimidating. Enemy units within 6 of this general cannot receive the Inspiring Presence or Rally commands. Taker Tribe Artifacts of Power, the Walloping Tentacle. Oh, sorry, you could also add one of these instead too. The Kraken Eater only. At the start of the combat phase, you can pick an enemy hero within 3 of the bear and roll a die. On a 4+, they take D3 mortal wounds and strike last. And that's not once per game, that's every single turn. So you kind of get the 4+ stomp that the trees used to get, but it does mortal wounds as well. And then the Glowy Lantern, you can cast a spell that summons an endless spell, but that's it. In your hero phase, you can cast a spell that summons an endless spell in the same manner as a wizard, but the range of the spell is doubled, which is kind of cool because you're on a giant base. That could be really cool. It does mean that you can't just take him as a wizard anymore, though. That's kind of a downgrade from the old way, where you can Mystic Shield yourself or throw up an Arcane Bolt. And it does mean you have to pay for an endless spell. So you gotta buy an endless spell to go with them, and they don't have their own. You have to take one of the cool ones. There's a couple cool things you can do in there, like a Life Swarm would be nice. There's a couple other things that might be cool. I mean, you could always take a Purple Sun or something crazy, but it's still a roll. Like, you're not like doing it automatically. It's just in your hero phase, you can summon something. I still think just run and charge and 6's bounce back is probably the best. Although the Strike Last Stomp is kind of cool too. Breaker Tribe Allegiance abilities. So these are for the Breakers, which is your Gatebreaker Gargant, sorry. Add 1 of the damage inflicted by each successful attack made by a friendly Man Crusher Gargant when they attack something wholly in a terrain feature or that's garrisoning. So basically you get the same ability that the actual Gatebreaker has. Ramming Speed uses this command ability at the start of your charge phase. The command can only be issued by your general, and the unit that receives the command must be a friendly Man Crusher Gargant unit. Till the end of that phase, you can attempt to charge a unit that received the command if it's within 18 of the enemy unit instead of 12, and you get 3d6 to charge instead of 2d6. So basically your Man Crusher Gargants can do a super long bomb on 3d6 potentially. Fierce Loathings. When you pick a Breaker Tribe army, you can pick one of the Fierce Loathings below and record it for your army. The rule goes for all your Gatebreakers and Man Crushers. So basically, you're calling out someone that you want to kill, and then you get bonuses against them. Would you like to kill Bossy Boots and Clever Clogs? Add 1 to hit rolls if you target a wizard or a hero. Idiots with Flags. Add 1 to hit rolls made by this unit that target enemy totems or with any command models. So, Idiots with Flags. Or Wannabes. Add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made by this unit that target enemy war machine or monster. It might the Fierce Loathing. Fierce Loathing in the Mortal Realms. This is one of my favorite set of names, I think, for items in this book. Breaker command traits, extremely bitter. You can get a second Fierce Loathing, which is pretty cool, but it only applies to your general, so you can get +1 hit against like Bossy Boots and Clever Clogs and Idiots with Flags. And then Seize Red. In the combat phase, if this general is within 3 of a defensible terrain feature or an enemy unit that is wholly on a terrain feature, use the top row on this general's damage table, regardless of how many wounds they've suffered. So he gets mad near terrain, which means you don't want to knock it down because it keeps him fully healthy. And then his artifacts, a Great Rekka. It's for a Gatebreaker only. If the unmodified hit roll for an attack made with this Fort Crusher Flail is a 6, it causes D3 mortal wounds on top of normal damage. And the King Slaughter Cowl. Add 1 to the wound rolls for attacks made by this bear that target an enemy hero. Now that's not I mean, it's I think there's only 2 of his attacks that are on 3+, but I don't actually know that giving him +1 hits the big deal because he has a very cool trade all your attacks ability that we'll talk about later. All right, the Smashers, they're battle trades, Bone Crushing Strikes. When a friendly Man Crusher Guardian unit from your unit fights, if it's within 3 inches of an enemy monster, you can say they're going to unleash a Bone Crunching Strike, and if you do so until the end of the phase, they're 1 attack, but the damage characteristic is 46, and all of them have to target a monster. So basically, they can do the same thing as the big guy can, and have a 46 damage. Don't let a few cuts stop you. You can use this command at the start of the combat phase. The command can only be issued by your general and must be received by Man Crusher Gargants. Until the end of the phase, use your top row of that unit's damage table, and no matter how many wounds they've taken. In addition, until the end of the phase, each model on that unit is slain. If they haven't fought, they can fight before they're removed from play. So basically, you make your Man Crushers really good. Smash your Tribe command traits. He sees green. Once per battle at the start of the phase, you can say that this general is Gorka Morka made manifest. 4+ shrug against mortal wounds until the end of the phase. Marrow Drinker, each time an enemy monster is slain by this general, roll a number of dice equal to the monster's wound characteristic. For every 5+, heal a wound, because he just drinks their marrow. And then Smash your Tribe artifact of power, the Shatterer, it's a Beast Smasher only. If the unmodified wound roll for the attack making with a Menhir club targets an enemy hero, monster, or war machine is a 6, the unit's armor has been shattered. The unit's armor has been shattered until the end of the battle. Ignore positive modifiers to save rolls for attacks that target that unit. So basically, they can never all at defense or get Mystic Shielded again, which is pretty cool. A Mantle of Tusks and Horns, Beast Smasher only. Once per battle at the start of the combat phase, you can say this bear is going to channel the Wah. If you do so, add 1 to the hit rolls for attacks made by melee weapons by friendly Sons of Behemat units until the end of the phase. So basically, he just Wahs. So the Smasher's kind of a giant orc. He can see Gorka Morka, he can Wah, he can break people's armor and drink their marrow, and he's good at leading the units. So he's almost like your infantry commander, and that's kind of neat. It sets him apart. The Stomper Tribe one then, Big Shouts. After your general issues a command to a friendly Man Crusher Guardian unit until the end of the phase, they can issue the same command to another friendly Man Crusher Guardian unit without any command points being spent. That's pretty cool. Grab those rocks and chuck them. You can use this command ability at the start of your shooting phase. The unit that receives the command can be a friendly Man Crusher Guardian unit, and they get +1 to the attack characteristic of throwing rocks. So you could basically do it twice with grab the rocks and chuck them, or getting stuck in. Add 1 to the damage inflicted by each successful attack made by a friendly Man Crusher Gargant unit if it targets an enemy unit that has 10 to 19 models. Add 2 to the damage if it's 20 or more models. So that's pretty cool, and it's each successful attack. So with the 3 of these things put together, for 1 CP, you could have 6 Man Crusher Gargants if you wanted to. I think they throw 1 rock each. It might be 2 rocks each. They throw, 1 rock each. So they're each going to throw 2 rocks. And then if it's a unit of 20 or more models, it's going to be D3 plus 2 damage each. So you'd have 6 guys hitting on 4s, but you could all attack to no, they'd already received an order, so you couldn't do that. 6 guys hitting on 4s, or 6 attacks hitting on 4s, goes to 12 attacks hitting on 4s. You can do a lot of damage. Is it as good as just fighting? Probably not. But it's a thing you could do. And it would cost you 1 CP to make them all throw. And then Stomper Tribe command traits. When you use this general's hurled body ability, you roll the both dice rolls. So trying to roll double the wound characteristic of the guys you're throwing at, which means if you're trying to go after a 3 wound model, you know what I mean, you could try and fish for 6s. Eager for the fight, you can attempt to charge with this general if it's within 18 of the enemy instead of 12, and you roll 3d6 instead of 2d6. So you get basically the big charge ability from before. And then Club of the First Oak, War Stomper only. In your hero phase, you can heal 1 wound allocated to the bearer. In addition, while the bearer has 25 or more wounds allocated to them, they have a ward save of 5+. So when they're down to their last 10 wounds, they get a 5+ ward, which means it effectively adds a third to it. So it means your last 10 wounds are kind of 13 wounds. Mantle of the Destroyer, War Stompers only. Friendly Sons of Behemat units within 12 of the bearer have a bravery characteristic of 10. All right, we're in Path to Glory. So you have to choose a tribe when you play Path to Glory. You basically are exploding the world. You have to become a stomp. It's the story of how your big Mega Gargant becomes a stomp and goes across the countryside and looking to try and do things like search for the good stuff or go on a monster hunt or find Bugman and get the beer. An extra big bag is your veteran ability for putting guys into. And then you get quirks for all your characters. You get a bespoke Wrath of King Broad. I keep saying Brog, don't I? All right, we're in a match play. Grand strategies. Broad's Revenge. You only get to do this one if you're taking King Broad, and you're probably taking King Broad. When the battle ends, you complete the strategy. If King Broad has not been slain and you picked up at least each of the 3 effects from the Power of Behemat prayer to apply at least once during the battle. So as long as he does all 3 of his pairs, you just have to pick each of the... oh, no, you have to have had it answered and then picked an effect. You have to do all 3 of his effects, basically. So kind of under your control as long as he's alive. Make the land trouble. When the battle ends, you complete this grand strategy. If any friendly units ran or made a charge move in every battle round, it does not have to be the same unit that runs or makes the charge move. So because you can run and charge with certain abilities in this book, that feels like the one everyone's going to take because it's completely under your control. 1 unit per turn, as long as you have a unit that can run and charge, we'll just keep on keeping on. On the Warpath, when the battle ends, you complete this grand strategy if every friendly unit on the battlefield is within enemy territory, so you just get the other side of the board. And then show 'em who's boss. At the start of the battle, the enemy unit with the highest wound characteristic is marked as the biggin. If there are multiple enemy units tied for the highest wound characteristic, you can pick which of these will be the biggin. When the battle ends, you complete this grand strategy if the biggin has been slain, and the model chosen to be your general has not been slain. So just go kill the biggest thing in their army. With the highest wound characteristic. In some armies, that could be hilariously easy to do. In some, obviously, not so hilariously easy to do. But because you're doing it during army list writing, I feel like you just make land tremble and then just have somebody run every turn. Battle tactics, that's mine. Pick an objective on the battlefield that's not in your territory. Complete this tactic if the objective was kicked away and is wholly within your territory at the end of the turn. So if you can obviously you have to have a Kraken Eater to do that. But if you kick it back in your territory, I think that's hilarious. Wrecking Crew, you complete this tactic if an enemy faction terrain feature was demolished. Man Skittles, you complete this tactic at the end of the turn if a friendly War Stomper used its hurled body ability. An enemy model was slain by the ability, and then an enemy battle line unit was picked as the first part of the ability and suffered any mortal wounds. So basically, if you knock down the 10 pins with your War Stomper, then you get this one. Fury of the Titans, you complete this tactic if you carry out the Beast Grapple or Shaking Roar and Colossal Slam monsters rampages this turn. So if you do all 3 of your special actions. Splat, pick an enemy hero. You complete this tactic if that hero is slain by wounds caused by an attack made with the thrown rocks, hurled debris, or hurled boulder this turn. That one's cool because it has more avenues to be able to be done, whereas like that's mine and Wrecking Crew and Man Skittles. Actually, no, you can still Wrecking Crew because you can demolish with any monster. So like that's mine and Man Skittles are like locked to a Titan. And then Colossal Violence, pick a friendly Mega Gargant. You complete this tactic if you carried the Titanic Duel Monsters Rampage with that unit, and the enemy monster picked as a target was slain. So as long as you duel and kill somebody, like some of these are pretty dependent. Like there has to be a monster, but there's always going to be a hero, but you might not have a throwing attack. So that one's kind of hard. Fury of the Titans, those 3 aren't necessarily very good. So Your rampaging Gargants, your battle tactics, you might not be leaning into very often because they're not really that easy to do for some of them. I think Wrecking Crew is probably the easiest. And then, yeah, and then Colossal Violence if there's a monster on the table, but that's really it. And then your core battalions, you have a Unified Drop or Magnificent Boss of the Stomp, which is basically 4 Mega Gargants. And then Footsloggas, you have to have at least 2 Man Crusher Gargants, and you can have a big guy. And it's either Unified Deployment or you can be Swift for a free at the double or Forward to Victory. Just to reroll a charge or turn a run to a 6 automatically. So your army could all be unified because Boss of the Stomp's pretty easy, you know what I mean? But if you don't care about that, you don't care about choosing first or second, then don't bother. You're like if you do Boss of the Stomp and just take 4 Gargants, then you're off to the races. But you may notice Kragnos is nowhere in any of these. So if you take a Kragnos, you're always going to have at least 2 drops, which means you may not check who's first. All right, your mercenaries. So there's a new one, obviously, Odo Godswallow, the Beast Smasher mercenary. He can be taken by a destruction army, but isn't Sons of Behemat, then you can have him. No other allied units can be taken, but you can ignore your allied points just like before. This is no change here. And his mercenary ability, he's a Beast Smasher, and he's got a Mightier Wallop. Add 1 to attack rolls for this unit that target an enemy monster. He's just +1 hit monsters. Bundo Whalebiter, still around. He's for order or destruction. And then his mercenary ability is still Dead Cunning for a Gargant. At the start of the combat phase, you can say the unit will be unnaturally cunning, and if you do so, the strike last effect applies to that unit until the end of the phase, but you get +1 to hit and wound rolls. So he can, as long as he's like not worried about getting punched by whatever he's fighting, then yeah, you get +1 hit and wound. One-Eyed Gronick, the mercenary, I didn't see a huge change here. He's for chaos or destruction, and he can shake the earth. Subtract -1 from hit rolls for attacks made by this enemy unit within 6 of this unit if they made a jump up and down attack early in the same phase. So basically the same as before. And then Big Drog 4 Kika still has Grievous Halitosis. At the end of the combat phase, you can pick an enemy unit within 3 of this unit and roll a number of dice equal to the number of models in the unit that are within 3. For each 6, they take a mortal wound. So, yeah, still mortal wounds. Not guys run away. So Kragnos in the book, obviously all the destruction armies get him, but he's exactly the same as he's been. There's no change from him as what's in the app. King Broad, I keep saying Brog, but it's Broad. Comes built in with that command trait that gives him 5 extra wounds, so he's got 40 wounds, Bravery 9, which is nice because you can reliably take the heroic action to heal with him, which is nice because it means you can push him back up. Now, all the Gargants have had their first or last, I think the Mega Gargants have all had their last wound bracket just dropped completely, but there are some changes in here. Broad obviously doesn't have any changes, but the changes to Crushing Charge, Death Grip, Longshanks, Terror, and actually Timber's the same. They all apply to everybody, so I'll just go through them now. So anyways, Obelisk of Torcrania. He's got 4 attacks with it when he's healthy, 3+3+, -2, 5 damage. The damage has kind of changed a lot for these guys. You'll notice they have a lower attack stat and a higher damage output on most of their main weapons, which is actually better because in the previous edition, most of what you did when you got like an order was you rerolled 1s. And that's great when you're rolling lots of dice because the more instances of a reroll you get, the more chances you have of hitting. In +1 to hit, it's actually better typically to roll less dice with higher damage because there's less chances of rolling a 1. Right? If you're rerolling 1s, you're probably healthier having a higher attack stat and lower damage. If you're just getting +1 to hit, then the lower attack stat with the higher damage output's probably statistically better. It's actually probably statistically the same. They have a lower ceiling on their total damage stat though. So this guy can do 20 wounds with his main weapon. Almighty Stomp, this is the same as all the other ones, and Death Grip is the same as all the other ones, all the other Gargants. So it's 3-inch range, 2 attacks, 3s and 3s, -2 D3 damage. That is a reduction in the AP. It used to be AP -3, now it's only -2. Or wait, sorry, no, that's the Death Grip, sorry, it's the -3 went to -2. Death Grip is 1 attack, 3s and 2s, -2 D6 damage. So that's the one where the run changed. The Stomp is the same. At 18 wounds, so if he goes to just above half, his move is 10. If he goes to 19 wounds, sorry, he's got 4 attacks, 2+ for his creepers. In each charge phase, the first time an enemy monster within 3 of this unit's picked to carry out a rampage, roll a die. If the roll is equal to or greater than the creeper's value shown on the table, they can't carry out a rampage. So at the beginning, monsters can't rampage back against him on a 2+ because it's just this weird stuff like following him around, gouging at their eyes and pulling their hair. And then his Mightier Makes Readier starts at 25, and at its lowest point is 15 models. So he's outclassing almost every unit when he's healthy. When he goes to 19, the creepers change from a 2 to a 3, and the Mightier Makes Readier goes down to a 20. At 27 to 34 wounds, his move goes down to a 9. He gets 3 attacks, and then 4+ creepers and 18 for Mightier Makes Readier. And then at 35 or more wounds, which is very, very low bottom, his move becomes 8. He's got 2 attacks, 5+ creepers, and 15 models, which is what he counts as. Now, the Almighty Stomp is no longer a reroll 1. It's +1 to hit if you've got a wound characteristic of 3 or less. I already explained the creepers. He's a War Master, so he's always your general, which means you can have a general on top of that. Crushing Charge is basically the same as before. If you're not a monster, on a 2+, you take D3 mortal wounds. If you are a monster, you take... D3 mortal wounds if it is a monster, D6 if it's not a monster. Because the smaller the thing you're charging is, the more you explode it. Death Grip is now when you are making an attack. If you're targeting a monster with the Death Grip, roll 2 dice instead of 1 and pick the highest. So it's not quite a reroll. It's a reroll without saying it's a reroll because they've gotten rid of rerolls. So it's 2 pick the highest for your single Death Grip attack, which is basically a reroll. And then Longshanks is also changed. Now it's a fly move. As long as you're making a normal move, run, or a retreat, you can pass over other models that are not monsters than part of a terrain feature that is 4 inches tall or less in the same manner as a unit that can fly. So basically you can run, retreat, or move, but not do it when you charge. So no Longshanks on the charge. And you count as flying for those things. If it's not a monster or higher than 4. Sons of Behemat's the same. If you be slain, just take D6 mortal wounds. Terror now is not minus. It's enemy units receiving cannot receive Inspiring Presence if they're within 3 of anybody with this ability. So you can't not run. Timber is basically the same. Roll off. The winner picks a point in the battlefield within 5 of the slain model, and then every unit within 3 takes D3 mortal wounds. Power of Behemat. Now these are his prayers because he's basically in touch with their god. He casts them on 3, but you're +1 if you kill a monster in the same turn. In this battle, sorry, not even in the same turn. If the monster's been killed during the battle, you get +1 to your prayers from that on, so it's always on 2+. Pick the effects below. The same effect cannot be picked more than once per battle. Shadow the Mountains. Add 2 to the move characteristic of friendly Sons of Behemat units till the end of the turn. Might of the Earth. You can heal up to D3 wounds allocated each friendly Sons of Behemat unit, and then pummel all to dust. Improve the rend characteristic of the following melee weapons used by Sons of Behemat by 1 until the end of the turn. So the Obelisk, Menhir Club, Shipwreck of War Club, basically all the main weapons and all the Gargants. And the massive clubs on the little guys too. So +1 damage to everybody. And you do have a grand strategy if you want. I think the running one's probably easier. But if you do all 3 of these over the course of a game, and once you've killed a monster, they're on a 2+, then you get to have 3 VPs. But he has to be alive at the end. I don't know, Might of the Earth, everybody heals D3 is pretty great. All right, and now you'll notice the Beast Smasher is actually Bravery 8. That's a difference. Everybody else, I'm pretty sure, stayed 7. Yup. So he's actually able to reliably heal as well, which is kind of cool. We've seen this guy's profile before, but 35 wounds, Bravery 8, and 4+ save. The Menhir Club's got 3 attacks, 3s and 2s. Its rend is -3 at the beginning, goes down to -1 at the end, because the rock starts to break, I guess. It does 5 damage, so he can do 15 damage base with his main attack. So again, the damage output's a little lower than previous things, although he does have his crazy monster killing ability. Stomp and Death Grip are the same. His wound track is pretty much the same. It's at 15, it's at 16, 23, and then 30+. So his move goes 10, 10, 9, 8. And the Menhir Club stays at -3 until he gets to below half his wounds, at 23 wounds taken. No, less than a third of his wounds, 2/3 of his wounds get inflicted. It goes to -2, and then 30+ to -1. And he goes 20, 18, 15, 12 for Mightier Makes Readier. Stomp, Crushing Charge, Longshanks, Death Grip, Sons of Behemat, Timber, and Terror all the same. But he's got his Beast Killing Strike. We've already seen that on Community. If you attack a monster within 3, you can do a Beast Strike, and it's 1 attack, but damage 5d6, and all of his attacks have to target the monster with the Menhir Club. But he can still attack other things with a Stomp and the Death Grip. And he's got his Behemoth Brawler, which is the end of the charge phase. If the unit's within 3 of any enemy monsters, you can carry out 2 monster rampages instead of 1. So if you do so, each monster rampage carried out must be different, and each must target an enemy monster. So basically, you could Titanic Duel and do the choke slam or whatever. So they'd cancel each other out, which is kind of cool. So he could Titanic Duel for +1 to hit, and then also Choke Slam, which relocates the guy and does D3 mortal wounds, and be -1 to hit. And they would cancel each other out. So then he could just do his Beast Breaking Strike afterwards and club Molly's on the ground on a 3. And he could alt attack, actually. No, because you can never be more than... It's not +1 net. You can just never be more than +1 and never be more than -1. So there'd be no point in alt attacking, I don't think. Is it net or is it total? I can't remember. I think it's just you cap. And the War Stomper Mega Gargant, 35 wounds, 4+ save, bravery 7. So he's back down to the core original stats. Big changes for him. His Ren changed on the Death Grip like everybody else. He lost his bottom profile, so he drops to an 8 at minimum for move, +1 for Titanic Boulder Club. Hurled body is 0. There's no negatives anymore. And Mightier Make Readier is 20, 18, 15, and 12. Jump's the same, crushing charge is this. Sorry, the changes are the same as everybody else. So his big difference is hurled body, which is pretty much the same, but there's a slight difference after they make a pile-in move now. The timing has changed. Pick an enemy model within 3 of it and roll a die. Add the hurled body modifier. If it's at least double than the model's wounds characteristic gets slain, you can pick another unit. And on a 4+, if it's visible within 12, it takes mortal wounds equal to the characteristic of the slain model. It's mostly just a timing difference there. And then his Titanic Boulder Club, basically the same. Number of attacks equal to number of models within 3, caps at 10, and you add 4 for each monster, and you add the Titanic Boulder Club modifier. So he's kind of the same. He could be 20, basically 10 attacks for a potential 20 damage with the Boulder Club, which is higher than the Menhir Club. Mr. Kraken Eater, the damage, so this is where it started to flatten. This is where it's kind of like King Broad. So same core stats him in the Gatebreaker. Hurl Debris is exactly the same. His Shipwreck or War Club went up to 4 damage, which is a big difference. It doubled in damage, but it less than halved in attacks. It's only got 4 attacks now. His core move also went down to 10, and his bottom went up to 8. But he doesn't have a bottom bracket anymore. So his total potential damage output is 16 wounds, whereas before it was 10 at 2, it was 20 wounds. So he lost 4 potential wounds, and Death Grip, again, the Ren changed. His core differences, Get Off Meland is basically the exact same thing. You just kick a thing, or kick an objective. And then Stuff Him in a Net, also the same, hasn't changed. It's really just his attacks, and is not having a bottom profile anymore for damage. Like the bottom's higher basically on his damage, except for his move and his War Club, which went down. Gatebreaker's the same. His 4 Crusher Flare went from a lot of attacks to 6, but the damage went up to 4. And his move went down to 10. So he, again, when you're getting bonuses to hit as opposed to rerolls, I think it kind of is okay, but his total damage output now potential is 24. As opposed to the 30 that was before, because it was 10 at damage 3. That's why everybody loved him. But his to hit's worse, right? So he only hits on 4s as opposed to 3s. So I don't know, 6 attacks on 4s, I feel like it's not going to be as consistently dealing damage. Whereas before, when you hit on 4+, having more dice counted for more, hitting on 3s, being able to all attack, the Kraken will probably end up doing just as much damage, just because you're going to miss more often with this guy. Better Ren on him though, because that sometimes matters. His big difference is he has something now called Pulverizing Strike. This is a brand new ability. When this unit fights, you can say they will unleash a Pulverizing Strike. If you do so, instead of making attacks against unit's melee weapons, pick an enemy within 3 of the unit and roll a die. On a 4+, they take 4d6 mortal wounds. So he basically turns the world upside down on a unit. Yay. I don't know. I mean, yeah, you could do a bunch of like the Titanic duels and stuff, move somebody around, and then just flomp them on a 4+ for 46 mortal wounds. I think I would just do it every turn. I would not try and hit with the 4 Crusher Flail. I think I would just go. And I mean, when you're super injured too, why not just do the Pulverizing Strike instead? Fish for that 4+. There's no way of modifying it because it's not an attack. You pick an enemy with 3 and roll a die. So it's not an attack, nothing modifies it. But 46 mortal wounds is on average like 13 mortal wounds, and that does a big chunk of damage in damn near anything. His Smash Down ability still adds damage to his 4 Crusher Flail, so he can be damage 5 if you're in cover or garrisoning a terrain feature. So that does mean that like things that are weirdly in cover because of effects, like Ideneth, who like start the game in cover, he's actually plus damage against in the first turn, which is weird during Flood Tide, because I think it provides cover, not +1 save. And when you do a Monster Rampage for Smash to Rubble, roll a dice for each enemy within 3 inches of the terrain feature that you pick, and on a 2+, they take D3 mortal wounds. And that's it for him. So some pretty significant changes to the Gatebreaker. I like that Pulverizing Strike for when he's injured, man. You just wait him into everything and then just start fishing for that 4+. The Man Crusher mob, Man Crusher Gargant. The big change here is their stat lines change. They don't degrade as fast. They kind of combine the top 2 stat lines. So they have to take 6 wounds now before they have to go to half before they start to degrade. The damage went up on their massive club, but they have their attacks by less than half now. They had 10, I think, before at damage 1. Now they have 4 at damage 2. And then they got a champion, and the champion has an ability. So when you take him as a mob, they get a Bull Stomper, and you get +1 attack on that model's massive club. And then he gets the ooze under the heel now. If you carry the Stomp Monster's Rampage with this unit's Bull Stomper and roll a 2+, for each Man Crusher Gargant model in this unit, add 1 to the number of mortal wounds caused. So you can basically roll an extra 2+ for each other Man Crusher Gargant model in the unit. You get +1 to your Stomp abilities because you start going down and just like crushing people. But only the Bull Stomper can carry out the Rampage. They just basically add into it, which is kind of cool. Your Stomping Charge, keep up, get running charges near Mega Gargants, which is cool. And then Stuff in a Bag's basically the same. Stomping Charge is the same. And that's it. And that's them. Pitch Battle Profiles. All right, well, they've no longer discounted the mob, so it's 150 for a Man Crusher and then 450 for 3. Everything in the army apart from Kragnos' battle line, including Broad, which is kind of cool. You're looking at 520 for the Beast Smasher and the Gatebreaker, 580 for Broad, and then 490 for the Kraken Eater, and the War Stomper's 450 is the cheapest still. You can pretty easily make a 3 Gargant and then Man Crushers list. That's what I'm thinking about doing. I'll probably do Broad and my Gatebreaker, who add up to 1100. And then if I throw in a War Stomper, who's the cheapest of the other ones, I'll end up with 1550, and I can take a Man Crusher mob of 3. Or 3 individual Man Crusher Gargants, which is probably what I'd actually do. Just take an individual ones instead, and have more like ability to like walk around the battlefield and throw rocks and stuff. So that will add up to $2,000 exactly. And then not worry about, and then what do I do as my tribe? Probably I like the grievances. I'd probably do the Breaker tribe. Do them as breakers, and then you get the grievances against stuff, which is super handy because your Man Crushers get the abilities as well. So I make them a Breaker tribe. All the Gatebreakers and Man Crusher Gargants would have +1 to hit for attack rolls to target heroes and wizards and units with command models, and then wannabes. So you just that's a way of getting around the flail being not so good too, because you could take Idiots with Flags and Bossy Boots and Clever Clogs, and then take the Extremely Bitter ability on the Gatebreaker Gargant, and he'd get +1 hit basically all the characters and any units that have command models, which is kind of everybody, which means he'd be 3s and 3s with his flail, which is cool. And then you fight against Caradron hanging out in their space trucks, and then he's damage 6. There's a lot of abilities that you could do. That's a cool starter, and you get to use Broad still as well. You get his prayers; they can heal everybody. That's actually a reason to take the units of man, whatever they're called, Man Crushers, in individual units of 1 too, because then they can all benefit from Might of the Earth individually, right? They can all have individual ones. They can all do their own monster abilities as well, because they're all monsters. Have them all be 1. Yeah, they're all monsters. They can all do monster abilities when they're in units of 1. And you get multiple Stuff in the Bags. Yeah, and that's probably the play. I gotta grab my hands on 1 more Gargant then, and 3 Man Crushers, and I can try the Sons of Behemat. So there you go. That's it. The new Sons of Behemat updated to 3rd edition, adding in all of the things you'd expect in one of these books. Adding in a new tribe, which is pretty cool, and basically giving them that Imperial Knight treatment where there's some new ways of playing the army, because you got a whole new tribe, a whole new Gargant to try out, and a big new special character who's a priest, which is kind of cool. Gives you access to something you didn't have access before. You can still summon an endless spell, but don't not be a wizard, which might mess some people's builds for the army. But overall, it feels like it freshens up what was a pretty one-dimensional army, and also adds some new options to destruction with the Beast Breaker Gargant as well. That's pretty cool new models. So there you go. Big thanks for watching. We'll see you for more GMG reviews in the future. Ton of mash. Hey there. I hope you enjoyed that video. There are tons of other games already recorded for you to watch. Click over to my channel page if you haven't already, and have a look through the dozens of playlists full of videos. I guarantee you'll discover a game you haven't seen played before. I put out new videos 7 days a week, and every day is themed to a different genre as I continue to explore the wider world of gaming. Of course, none of that's possible without you, the viewer, so click a like and subscribe if you'd like to stay on top of what's happening here daily. My 2 kids and I are massively grateful to be able to have the flexibility of this job so I can always maximize my time with them. If you want to support me continuing to put out this content, it's only possible because of my amazing backers on Patreon who support the studio, equipment, and model cost, as well as being how I make the bulk of my living. You can also help out by buying a t-shirt through Spreadshirt, a measuring gauge or widget from Death Ray Designs, or buying one of my games and supplements like Last Days, Gamma Wolves, and Blaster. As a way of showing my appreciation, patrons get early access to new games and supplements that I write throughout the course of the year. Huge thanks for watching, it really does help out, and happy gaming.